started. Hey everybody, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for sticking around. This is obviously near and dear to my heart, but our church family has really, when asked, it always comes up big in its giving towards things bad going on in the world. Unfortunately, there is a lot of bad going on in the world, but Madison does such a good job of giving towards those type things, and you're a big part of that. And so I want to tell you thank you for all that you have done for our brothers and sisters in Ukraine and going to do. One of the 10 things you see up here is engaging in missions. And so we want to not just be a church that gives towards missions, but actually engages in it and is an active part in that. And so just appreciate your desire to learn more about what good we are doing throughout the world, what good God, I guess is a better way to say it, what good God is doing throughout the world. And so here tonight is my dad, who he'll tell you his story, but is a preacher over in the Shoals area at Tuscumbia Church of Christ, but has been going to Ukraine for a very, very long time, and I'll let him tell you about that. But I won't take any more of his time or your time, and let me say a prayer and then turn things over to him. God, thank you so much for all you do for us, God. We are blessed. We're blessed to be in a free, a peaceful land. And God, we're here tonight to learn more about the good things, the incredible things that you're doing in a war-torn Ukraine. God, we want to pray for the great people of that country, and we want to not just pray for them, but to actively be involved in their lives and the good things that you're doing there. God, thank you for this opportunity that we have, that you have given us to do good things throughout the world. And God, please bless us as we learn more about our brothers and sisters in Ukraine tonight. Thank you for Jesus. It's in his name we pray. Amen.
An honor to be here. It is a privilege to be with such generous people, with such mission-minded people, and I'm grateful for the invitation. Also grateful to have some of my favorite people here with us, all the way from the great country of Ukraine over here to my right. And you will hear, as I'm talking, you'll hear somebody else talking, and that is Sister Kate doing the translating tonight for our group. I believe we've got about 8 people with us from Ukraine. I'll say more about some of those folks later and introduce them to you. But without any further ado, let me get into some of this with you. This photo, 1993. Do you recognize the good-looking guy in the middle there? Haven't changed much since 93, have I? That picture was taken at the airport in Mobile, and I guess it was October. It was October of 1993. So what is that? That's about 29 years ago. Is that about right? And do you recognize the little boy that I'm holding in my arms there? He hadn't changed a bit either, has he? That's one of your youth ministers. That's Jordan Abrams. You believe that? So he was cute, wasn't he, back in the day? And that's his brother Josh, and that's my wife Judy. And well, you know, there are a lot of things interesting to me about that photo, but literally, that is what I wore. What was I thinking? I got on the airplane wearing a coat and tie, my very first trip to Ukraine back in 1993. You remember Ukraine? Those of you who keep up with current events and history, you may remember that back In those days, Ukraine had broken free from the Soviet Union, which had dissolved basically under Gorbachev and Yeltsin and some other leaders. And it was a great time to go to Ukraine. It was a great time to tell people there about Jesus, about His church, to take Bibles there. It was a time of great excitement, great uncertainty. It was good to be able to go to Ukraine in 1993. It was one of the greatest decisions I ever made in my life. I went to Ukraine thinking, quite ambitiously, I'm going to save Ukraine. I'm going to take the gospel of Jesus and save a lot of people, bless a lot of people, help change a lot of lives. Kind of sounds arrogant, doesn't it? What happened was, in a sense, Ukraine saved me. Going to Ukraine blessed me. Going to Ukraine has made my life a lot better. I went to give, but I can honestly say that since 1993 and about 100 trips between that one and the last one a few weeks ago, I'm the one who's a better person because of all these journeys to Ukraine. Have you gone on a mission trip? You don't have to have a passport to do that, right? Many of you parents, you've been on the most important mission trip of all to your child's bedroom, right? To talk to them about Jesus, to have prayer with them. So we're all missionaries as we go into all the world, as we go to Walmart, go to the bank, go to school, go to our work. We're going, you don't have to go to Ukraine to be a missionary, but it helps to go to places like Ukraine, and it helps to have people like you that help send folks like me and many others in these pews to places like Ukraine, because a couple summers ago, I was so blessed to be able to travel with about 23 of Madison's finest. And they did such a good job representing the Lord, representing you, and they helped change a lot of lives from their time over in Ukraine, helping us with Camp Americrane and Vacation Bible School and other things. The story about how I came to begin going to Ukraine is interesting to me, and it might be a little bit interesting to you. I had grown up intending to be a gospel preacher. It's all I ever really wanted to be, but I also had in the back of my mind, I need to go overseas. I need to be involved in international mission work. And had never made up my mind where I would go or to go. And I was at a lectureship at Freed-Hardeman University before 1993. I graduated from Freed back in '85, and I've been to one of these lectureships, and I was in an auditorium like this, but I was up in one of the side rooms listening to my guy teach. There was a partition there, and there was another class happening simultaneous out here. And I was listening to the speaker out here more than I was listening to the speaker in there in my room, even though there's a partition between us, because the guy out here was speaking so enthusiastically, so passionately, so inspirationally, and he was speaking about foreign missions. In particular, he was speaking about the need to go to India and take Jesus to the wonderful people of that great nation. And one of the things he said resonated with me as I was listening to him, more than I was listening to my guy. He said very emphatically, something that stepped all over my toes because I am an especially picky eater. He said, brother, if you're not going to places like India to do mission work because you're afraid of the taste of the food, then your soul is on the road to torment. Now that's a pretty audacious thing to say, isn't it? Any other picky eaters here? And I'm sitting there on the other side of the partition, and I'm thinking, he might as well have called my name, because, one of the things I'm thinking, if I go over, how will I survive? How will I find something to eat? And so went home, basically packed my suitcases and went somewhere overseas, and where I went actually was in this place, Ukraine. This is a map, obviously, of Ukraine. You can tell a lot about it by zooming in on some of these names, just to kind of give you an overview of some of this. This area right there, I would call the Bible Belt of Europe. This is the Donbass region, the Donetsk region, and there have been more Christians, in my estimation, more Christians in this area than in all of Ukraine put together, but not just in all of Ukraine put together, in all of Europe. In all of Europe. There are people in the house today that have been to that area. And that is the area, been back to that area back in the 90s, that is the area that is under primary assault even tonight. Ukraine, they're 8 hours ahead of us, but it's no mystery as to why the devil chose to assault through Putin and his demons beginning in 2014, that area. There is an aspect of this that is certainly a holy war, because in that circle, that approximate circle, again, there were thousands of New Testament Christians. And from 2014 and even tonight, almost all of them have been displaced. Almost all of them have lost everything of material value. Some have lost their lives, and many of them have gone throughout all the world. And in fact, we actually have some from that region that are here with us, blessing us with their presence tonight. In the center of the circle, you see the town Kramatorsk. That's the place I've been going to for so long. You see Donetsk right there in the middle. That's a hotly contested area. You see Mariupol down there. That's a port city that had, at the beginning of this most recent invasion, about 500,000 people. There are about 80,000 left. How many died? A lot. A lot. There are a lot of Christians in that city. None of them perished. We're thankful for that, and I'll tell their story a little bit later. But this is Kharkov. We have guests with us tonight from Kharkov. This is one of the most hotly contested areas at the start of the war because it's so close to Russia. All of that to my right as I look this way is Russia. And to give you some idea of the difference in sizes between Ukraine and Russia, or between David and Goliath, think of Russia as a pumpkin, and think of Ukraine as the size of a grape. You know, that's basically the proportions involved here. Russia has more than 100 million people, 100 million people more than Ukraine does. In the news, you hear a lot about this area, Crimea, that was taken over in 2014. The bridge that was blown up is right in the middle of the circle there. We got a lot of Christians that have gone to safer areas of Ukraine, presumably safer, to Lviv. We have a refugee center there. We have one up here in the Ternopil region. We have one down here in Chernivtsi. This is Poland. We have dozens and dozens of Christians that have gone over to Poland. But that gives you some idea of, and this is Kyiv, capital of Ukraine, hotly contested. Remember, Russian folks thought this would be a 3-day deal, and they'd move into Kyiv, take over. They'd be viewed as conquering heroes. And, Putin underestimated what? He underestimated the fight of the Ukrainian people. He underestimated the charisma and the effectiveness of a leader like Zelensky. He underestimated the power of your prayers and mine, didn't he? Because we're standing with Ukraine on our knees, aren't we? All right, look at this. This is I want to put faces to the story of what is happening in Ukraine and what has happened. This is a young lady named Julia. This is a picture she took of herself after the war began. Julia was a resident of Donetsk in 2014, the first invasion. She and her family essentially lost everything in that region, and she found herself in Kyiv as a student when the war happened. So she's been in the hot zone 2 different times. She was up there in Kyiv, essentially away from family, away from her support system when the war began, February the 24th. And so she went down into the basement area of her dormitory. And I'd encourage you to get on Facebook if you're of that ilk and become friends with Julia, and go back to February the 24th and 25th and 26th and read some of the things she was posting as the bombs were going off around her in the city of Kyiv. Let me read something that is so powerful that she wrote, and I saved in my notes. And she's not the only one that was posting amazing things. And bear in mind, when February the 24th happened, it's the 23rd, it's a Wednesday night here And when the bombs start going off, means because of my heartbeats, my children, my family, spiritual family, that's an emotional family in Ukraine, I mean, it was a tough thing to hear that this reality is happening. And so I'm getting messages from Julia and others like this. She said, I spent all night and day in the sanctuary. She means bomb shelter there. And here I really come to the point of how, notice this, we can learn from these words, friends, how unimportant everything is. She puts in parentheses, read to the end. And now I'm not complaining and not bragging at all. I cannot completely believe what is happening. When I was packing all the necessary things fit in one backpack. And turns out, who needs these beautiful clothes, cool earrings, or expensive shoes? You understand what Julia's saying? She packed all of her important items in one backpack. You compare that to us. How much of our stuff can we fit into a backpack? What percentage of our stuff goes in a backpack? Not much. We're blessed, aren't we? We really are. So she goes on to say, I was not so scared in 2014 in Donetsk, first invasion, as I am now. And now all sorts of conclusions come to mind. And there you go. One of the important and most important things is relationship. We must build good, strong, faithful relationship with God and people. I hope this war ends very soon. And this was written, 6 months ago. And I really wish it was some stupid dream or matrix crash, and I'll delete this post. And now I'm very scared and anxious. Prayers, please. Thank you for your calls, texts, and support. This is so precious. I love you guys. God is with us. And she puts a heart there. And then she shares with us Isaiah 41:10. Fear not, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you and uphold you with my righteous right hand. And that's not the most flattering. Julia's an attractive young lady. That's not the most flattering portrait of her, because she's been tired. She's scared. She's alone. Hadn't had a good hot shower and a lot of good food when that picture was taken. But I'm thankful that prayers were answered. And Julia is here. Julia, stand up so folks can welcome you to Madison. Give Julia a welcome to Madison. That'd be all right. Thank you, Julia. She's one of the rock stars of my friends in Ukraine. By the way, world-class pianist too. So a lot of talent in that lady. A lot of eloquence as well. So to put faces on the story also, this is another Julia and her daughter Miriam. You see in the way I would look at it, lower right-hand picture, and they are from the city of Kharkov, and whenever this started, they went down into a subway system, and they stayed with lots and lots of people. You can tell something of their accommodations there in these photos. You can see this selfie was made after the war had been going on for a while, and they're exhausted. They're in a cold place. They're sleeping on marble floors. It's not convenient. It's so crowded at times they could not lay down. They could not sit down. They had to stand in that place for many hours. Miriam is 10, by the way, just 10. And this is what it looked like some of the time in that subway. There are no restrooms down there, no running water, no restaurants. Not a nice place, but it's a safe place. And something interesting, the electricity's still on. The Russians did not hit the electrical grid. They did not hit the capacity to communicate by internet. Really, it's a big surprise, a blessing actually. All right, so this Julia and her daughter Miriam, they need to get out of Kharkov. Kharkov's right there on the border of Russia. The bombing is unrelenting. And we're all able to communicate from America to Julia, to Miriam, and saying, you got to get out. We're praying for you. She's posting emotional, inspirational messages on Facebook also about her condition. And they had evacuation trains that were coming into and out of Kharkov. The only problem was to get on the train, you didn't have a ticket. You just had to be bigger, stronger, faster, and then some of these other folks in the crowd, and you had to get from, we'll say, way over here to way over there through all those people onto that train. So how are you going to do that? You're a mama, you got a 10-year-old daughter, and also they had a pet rat that they wanted to take with them. The 10-year-old didn't want to leave the rat behind in Kharkov. what's it called? Not a rat. What is it? A guinea pig. A guinea pig, which is just a real big rat. And so Miriam, the daughter, didn't want to leave the rat. And so somehow, some way, Julia and Miriam were able to get through this crowd of people and onto the train. And I asked her how she was able to do it, and she said it was the wings of God. Can you imagine? Trying to get from that subway, bombs going off, sirens wailing all the time, and you make it to that train and made it ultimately to West Ukraine, to safer areas, and then to Warsaw, Poland, and then ultimately to Madison tonight. Julia, where are you? Would you stand up, please? These Ukrainians are real shy. Face that way so they can see that you made it. You're good. And you can sit down. The rat, by the way, is still in Poland. Hate that. But, these three ladies, they came to your airport here in Huntsville several months ago. And they are the first, they made history because they are the first Christians from Ukraine to come to America once the war started through Mexico. That's before with the Welcome Ukraine program that other Ukrainians are able to come here now. And I guess all three of them were on a donkey that came across the river. Is that right? No, they didn't ride a donkey. It wasn't quite so primitive, but they came legally through Mexico, and they're here now. And some of you were at the airport to welcome them. Thank you for that. There's 17 now that have come. Most of them are pictured in this photo that have come through your airport, and we're grateful. They're talented, wonderful friends of ours, and some of them are with us tonight. And I don't want to embarrass them too much. I'll talk more about them a little bit later on. One of the things that's happened because of this war, there've been a lot of goodbyes. A lot of goodbyes. Whenever the war started, again, I'm not extra noble person, but it was impossible for me to stay in America knowing that the Julias and the others that I care deeply about were in dangerous circumstance. I felt like I could go over there and maybe not get in the way and try to do something that would be of help. And so I was able to go into Warsaw, Poland, and then go across the border. The border was an amazing scene. You got 8 million displaced Ukrainians trying to get out of Ukraine. 4 million tried to get and have gotten into Poland. And as I was coming from Poland into Ukraine with a friend of mine, Marlon Rutherford, that some of you may know, it was remarkable to see all these people at the gate trying to get away from the threat, the death, the destruction, and trying to make it to Poland and beyond to places of safety. And so we went into Lviv. We were trying to help with money from people like you, right? We were trying to help Ukrainians from all those various places, dangerous places, come to West Ukraine, and we were going to rent some buses. We rented 3 buses to help them get from Lviv into Warsaw, Poland, and from Warsaw, Poland throughout Europe, and some ultimately, obviously, to Madison tonight. But the men age 18 to 60, 65 could not come with their children, could not come with their wives unless they had 3 or more children or some physical problem. And so that Sunday afternoon in Lviv was a very sad scene as there were many, many goodbyes. This husband is saying goodbye to his sweet wife and daughter, and these 2 young ladies are actually in the Netherlands tonight in a good, safe place. Again, a lot of this provided by funds from people like you and prayers from people like you. Another goodbye, this is Alina and Bogdan. She's saying goodbye to her husband for a time, and I'm up in the bus watching. I had permission, by the way. I would not share this with you without them giving me permission to share. And they've got 2 children, and it's just tough when and you never know if you're going to see your husband again. Kids never know if they're going to see their father alive again. This is one of the 3 buses, and we're headed to safety. This is the oldest that came out on those freedom buses, we'll call them, and the youngest. And this lady had never flown in a plane before, and once we got to Warsaw, we knew she was having to go so far to another safe place. It just wasn't right to put this elderly lady, babushka, on a train, and the uncertainty of the schedule. So she flew on a plane, and she was a hero, and that little baby did too. So precious. You'll meet them in heaven. This is what people are trying to get away from. This is part of Mariupol, and when you see people carrying these bags, they're carrying everything they've got. That's all they've got. That's why your prayers matter. We want to pray believing, right? That your prayer could be the one God's waiting on. Your prayer could be the one that helps these ladies find a place of safety. Your prayer could be the one that helps end this madness of this war and helps the healing begin. By the way, I didn't mention this, but just in that, to put it in human terms, in that circle that you saw earlier, kind of the Bible Belt of Europe, over 400 children, just children, over 400 children have died in that area. And that's just how many have been confirmed, counted as killed. In Mariupol, again, how many children died there? There's no way to know. There's so many mass graves and so much horror. But this is not a video game, as you know. This is not a movie. This is reality. This is happening in our life. Never again is happening again and again and again. 9/11 happens every day in Ukraine. It's happening every day in Ukraine. And these people that are going through this, they're worthy of our prayers. Our prayers can't be affected by geography, right? Just because it's a long way from here, it can't be a long way from our heart. I'm preaching to the converted. I know that. You wouldn't be here if you weren't already believing that. You talk about courageous people. These are the Christians of Mariupol. Mariupol has been obliterated, essentially wiped off the map. Essentially every building, every apartment, every private home, every park in Mariupol has been demolished. There was a strong church in Mariupol, a strong contingent of Christians. As the war was happening, there were still about 90 Christians or so in Mariupol, and because of the massive shelling and bombardment, we lost contact. There was no electricity, there was no water, there was no heat. Remember, this started in February, so it was cold in Mariupol. And one of the more remarkable facts that has happened concerning our Christians in Mariupol, not one of them perished, not one of them lost their lives. It's the miracle of all miracles, and you understand what I mean when I use the word miracle. Some were injured. Some were injured. In fact, the guy kneeling down in the front right there, he was shot. It was a terrible thing. The first reports we heard, he was shot in the head. Thankfully, he was shot in the head, but it wasn't a piece of shrapnel that went deeply into his head. It was kind of more than a flesh wound, but something he recovered from, and other members of his family were injured. They were actually in their vehicle trying to get into a safer area when the shells started happening near them. But so these people, talk about a will to survive. They all covied up in the church building. Church building was damaged by bombings, and it was in a neighborhood that was being obliterated. They didn't have sufficient food for everybody, but people were bringing together what they could scrape up from their own kitchens, and they were sharing, and they didn't have running water, and so what they did to have hydration. I've seen pictures of this. There were trees out in the church, around the church building, and they cut V-shaped lines or formations in the trunks of these trees, and they put little jars and cups and containers at the bottom of these V-shaped things to drain whatever liquid was in the tree into that. And some of these containers would get maybe that much, and they'd take that in, they'd pass it around among the Christians. And every day in Mariupol was a struggle to survive. Every day they didn't know if it'd be their final day. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people have potentially been killed and buried in Mariupol. Mariupol is the city where that theater, where over 1,000 people were taking shelter, was horribly bombed. So terrible things happening in Mariupol. The Chechens were paid by the Russians to go into Mariupol and fight. Some of the Chechens are especially fierce people, but some Chechens alerted the Christians there in the church. I'm getting chill bumps now. They alerted them saying, this area is going to get especially bad real soon. The Christians knew, we got to do something. We got to get out of here. And so they prayed, we prayed, and they devised a plan that'll make one of the most wonderful books, movies you'll ever read, you'll ever see. They decided to do this. They were going to go to get out they would have to, Mariupol's way down here, they'd have to go through that occupied territory of Donetsk, go up through Russia, and come all the way down here through Estonia. You see up there, go through St. Petersburg to Estonia, then come down into Warsaw, Poland, where we'd have lots of resources to help them. And so they load up, they say a lot of prayers, do a lot of hugging, and they expect a great likelihood when they get into Russia to lose their passports and be taken captive. If you go into Russia, they take your passport and you can't get out of Russia. Hundreds of thousands of people from Ukraine have been kidnapped, stolen from the occupied territories into Russia. They're trapped now. So many children in forced adoptions now in Russia, just a bad deal. So God was with these people. First, they get out of this area, they get into Russia, and they start traveling north, right, trying to get to St. Petersburg, then to Estonia, down into Warsaw. And they're worn out, they're hungry. You know, there are a lot of things going against them, but at least now they're in Russia. Now, a lot of Christians in Russia, they got their minds right, their hearts are good, they understand the reality of what's happening with this war. But some of them, some good Christian folks in Russia, have been listening to the propaganda that says Ukraine is filled with fascists and Nazis, and we got to liberate the Russian-speaking people, save them from the Ukrainian-speaking people. And so there's some issues, kind of like in our nation's civil war, if a war could be called civil, between Ukrainian Christians and Russian Christians. It's kind of a predictable thing. We're going to have to work on that later on when peace shows up again. So these folks, where I'm going with that is these folks from Mariupol had difficulty finding a place to stay. You know, if they're traveling through Alabama, they pick up the phone, hey, you folks in Madison, y'all put us up for the night, and you put them up for the night. They can't do that in Russia. They found one man, one Christian, about halfway on this journey that would let them stay in his place, had a one-room flat. So there are about 23 of them. They crowd into that one-room flat, and they try to rest for that night. They load up in the van again, and they head north. And I'm getting a message that they can't cross the border from Russia to Estonia unless they can show them at the border that they have a confirmed place to go and stay. And so I said, no problem. I'll go online. I'll make a reservation at a hotel for them in the capital city, the first city there, when they come to Estonia. I get my Regions debit card, I go to Travelocity or Expedia, I make a reservation, nice hotel, I'm excited, I'm doing that not with my money, but with money donated. I'm thinking it's going to be the first comfortable bed these folks have slept on. The one question they kept asking about the hotel, are we going to have breakfast? I mean, they're just hungry. They're just hungry. And of course, we made sure they had a great breakfast. The issue was, how would they get across the border into Estonia? So they've got the paperwork wired to them through their electronic devices. But then I get I think everything's handled, everything's fine, reservations made. Then I get a message from them as they're in transit up there, nearing the border. There's time pressure. There are a lot of things going on. Their names were not on the document, and they're not going to let them cross. Now, my worst nightmare is I've messed up, and these people are going to be kidnapped. They're going to stay in Russia. They're going to be in that prison for the rest of their lives. That's my fault. And so I get a hold of the hotel. I give them the list of the 23 names, the ages and everything, and everything's settled and all. And, 8 hours difference. So I go to sleep that night. About the time they're going to be getting near the border, I'm expecting to wake up in the morning, get good news. That they've made it safely, getting chill bumps up here in front of you. So I wake up about 3 in the morning for some odd reason, maybe the providence of God. Woke up at 3 in the morning, just decided to check some messages and all, and my phone was just blowing up with messages from this group or people from this group saying the reservation at the hotel is not confirmed. Regions did not accept my debit card payment because, who in Alabama reserves 4 hotel rooms in Estonia, and that's legitimate, and you're doing it like at midnight, right? And so I get on, online. You can't really call Regions at 3 in the morning, can you? Now I'm really panicking. They're not going to let them cross the border until we get this, and if we can get this straightened out. And I'm dealing with a computer, and the computer is rejecting my card. Again, predictably, 3 in the morning, you're trying to reserve something in Estonia, that's got to be fraud. And I keep trying, and I'm telling you, I'm an emotional person. I was pretty emotional, and it's hard to be fussing with a computer at 3 in the morning and praying and all that. Long story short, eventually after trying and trying, the computer miraculously accepts my region. I get approval for that. They're able to cross the border. They go in that hotel. First good night's rest in months. First breakfast in months. And they make it down to Warsaw. We had a Camp Americrane a few weeks ago in Warsaw, one of them, and in Lviv, Ukraine, the other. And I was able to meet and hug those folks. Man, you talk about, I mean, that's like heaven. That was, wow. There's a lot of tears seeing these good folks there. And so we've got a house also. This is another subject, this in Warsaw, that folks like you are helping us to provide for a lot of the refugees who've come out. A lot of baptism been happening there in that house. By the way, since the war, you'll see a picture of this in a few moments. Since the war's begun, there have been over 100, probably 150 baptisms into Christ from the refugees. There's been such a upsurge in those that have come into Christ in Ukraine or have come out of Ukraine. And put this in perspective. There have been, in my estimation, I don't think this is exaggeration at all, there have been more baptisms in Ukraine since February the 24th than in all of Europe since February the 24th. It's just hard to find anybody in all of Europe, not bashing Europe, that wants to learn about Christ, that wants to be baptized into Christ. So Ukrainian people and what's continuing to happen, they're being scattered throughout the world and they're continuing to preach Jesus, and souls are continuing to be added. It's amazing, positive. Think of something else positive. We have this annual Camp Americrane. I'll talk more about that in just a few moments, but have a lot of people come together and meet at this Camp Americrane. That's what you folks participated in a couple summers ago. And this couple got married not all that long ago. They met at Camp Americrane, fell in love, grew in love, and they got married during war. So in war, you've got hate, but you've also got love, and a lot of love stories like this, and we're thankful for that. A lot of baptisms. This is one that happened in Warsaw shortly after we were able to get there and help those Ukrainians get over into a safer area of Poland. And a lot of these new births are happening. You know, when you don't know if this is your last day, it kind of takes you to a new level of being serious about your relationship with God. Am I really ready to meet God? And so a lot of folks are getting ready. This is the train station in Kramatorsk, Ukraine. It's a train station I've been in and out of probably well over 100 times. And it doesn't look like a bomb hit this place, does it? But a few weeks into the war, 2 bombs hit this place. The Russians did a terrible thing. They blew up the train track outside of Kramatorsk, which meant thousands of people would be stuck at this train station. And this is in the Donbass region, a dangerous area. And with all these thousands of people just standing around exposed, they sent 2 missiles into this train station area. You see the train station hasn't really been affected. You see some boards there over windows, and that's about it. They sent bombs that are against the Geneva Convention, the kind that explode in midair and release shrapnel. They're not designed to destroy buildings. They're designed to destroy people, and over 100 people died in that place. And one of those people who died is this lady. Her name is Lily. She's the first Christian, first member of the Lord's church to perish that we know of in this war. There are 2 that we know of that have died. I mean, God has been so merciful to preserve the lives of our brothers and sisters. This is Lily. She was at that train station the morning the missiles went off, exploded. She was there to help her elderly mother get to a safer place. It's kind of horrible, it's truly horrible how these fragments work. Lily's elderly mother was standing right beside her daughter, and when the bombs went off, her daughter died, and her mother standing right next to her wasn't harmed at all. And that happened with lots of families. I say her mother wasn't harmed at all. That's not true, is it? Her heart was shattered. Her heart was shattered. But Lily was a wonderful woman. She was a wonderful woman of God, a great blessing. And now she's with Jesus. this is a good fella. This is Taras. Met Taras back in 2003, our first Camp Americrane. He's an orphan. I'm about done. I know, and I'll give you time for some questions here in just a moment. But Taras is one of the heroes of Ukraine. He is in Kramatorsk there in that picture. That's the church building boarded up. He was my bodyguard when I went to Ukraine a few weeks ago to go into some of that area in the east. But at our first Camp Americrane, he wasn't invited. Our camp happened at a place where there was also an orphanage, and he was one of the little boys coming to the fence watching us have our camps, our classes, our activities with our church children, our other people. And he wanted to get in on the fun, the excitement, and he would jump the fence. He would go around the gate and come in and participate, even without permission. One of our Ukrainian friends, Volva and his wife Oksana, a preacher and his wife, they noticed Taras and befriended him. Long story short, they formed a great relationship, but over the years, he became like an adoptive son of theirs, and he became a Christian, and a great and courageous Christian doing heroic work. He's going in these dangerous areas with his van, and he's pulling out. That's the guy there in the blanket is a preacher from the Church of Christ, suffered a terrible stroke, and Taras risked his life to get his wife, and take them to safer places. And we just started full-time support of Taras, and funds from people like you help take care of him. This is the city of Kramatorsk that I was in again a few weeks ago. And one reason I'm showing you that picture is that is the center square of Kramatorsk, and that's where a small bomb, there are a lot of craters throughout Kramatorsk. That's one of the smaller craters. But here's the question, where are the people? Where are the people? They're gone. Kramatorsk is a very dangerous place right now. The Russian soldiers are not very far away, but I don't think famous last words, I don't think they'll be able to get there and take over the city. They're bombing it with missiles, but there's a well-fortified place, a lot of soldiers there, and just can't see the Russians making it. That's a change in my attitude about that. There's one of the big craters. You can't tell how deep that crater is. This is about 30 feet deep, and that's a school in Kramatorsk. The most dangerous places to be in Ukraine are schools, hospitals, shopping centers. What's the common denominator of all three of those? People. People. Russians are trying to destroy people, not the military. They're losing trying to destroy the military, but they can. It's a campaign of terror, isn't it? The hearts of people. This couple of our camp groups from a few weeks ago that, again, folks like you helped support, and folks like you attended a summer ago. One of these happened in Ukraine. One of these happened in Warsaw. And it's like a foretaste of heaven. All these folks coming together and hugging and crying and laughing and singing and praying and worshiping together. Such a great experience to be a part of something like this. And you see our color shirts. We lined up in the picture like the Ukrainian flags are, with the blue sky color top and the golden fields below. That was a blessing to be with these heroes. It really was. This is my mom in Ukraine. Her name is Anna. She's the oldest Christian in Ukraine. She lives in Kramatorsk, and she will not leave the city. And when I went into Ukraine a few weeks ago, she was essentially the reason that I went. I wanted to see her. I wanted to try again to persuade her to leave Ukraine, and she wouldn't go. She wouldn't leave. She said her next stop's heaven. She's stubborn, and she's earned the right, hasn't she, to call her shot, so to speak. She survived World War II, didn't leave Kramatorsk then when it was occupied by the Germans, and she says, she's not going anywhere but heaven now. And you got to respect her faithfulness. She's a remarkable lady. Again, she's 98, and when I went to see her, she's so sharp, she actually prepared a meal for me. We took her a lot of food, gave her a camp shirt. Our theme was created for such a time as this, and that lady is created for such. You'll never see a greater servant than Anna. And you'll meet her in heaven, and you say, okay, you're the woman that Jeff told me about. But she's been so good to me. Please pray for Anna every day. Pray that she'll, and see, winter's coming. And just recently, we've been very concerned how she's going to, there's no heat, and that whole area is under mandatory evacuation. Again, she won't go. So thankfully, Taras, the hero I showed you a picture of earlier, he's taken her an electric heater. Well, they don't have electricity a lot of times, but now we've got 20 generators on the way to various parts of Ukraine, and God willing, there'll be one there that Anna will have access to. And we got some folks that'll help her do that. So please pray that that lady stays warm enough and the Russians stay out of Kramatorsk. This is the final slide that I'll show you. One of the things we did at both of our camps on Saturday night, we had an hour of prayer for Ukraine. It was simulcast around the world. Maybe some of you participated with us. A lot of praying, a lot of singing, a lot of scripture reading, that God would be merciful and end this war. And I noticed as it was over, just kind of glanced down on the floor, and I saw things like that all over the floor. When you first see the picture, you don't have any idea what that is, but now you probably know those are teardrops. There were teardrops all over that wooden floor where my Ukrainian friends had been gathered up that night praying and singing and reading scripture and hugging on one another and loving one another. It was a powerful, emotional moment, and that to me is that kind of sums up what this is all about. Jesus wept because he loves people, right? We weep with our Ukrainian brothers and sisters because we love them, and we have weeping now, but we're praying for joy to come in the morning. So I ask you, please don't look away, don't become desensitized to this story. We have a short attention span, got a lot going on in our own lives, in our own country. I get that, but please have a heart that can still be broken for what our Ukrainian brothers and sisters are going through. Let me introduce one that I'll embarrass for a moment that's with us. Kate, would you stand up for just a moment, please? This is Kate. Kate was in our daughter's wedding. Yeah, welcome her. Kate was in our daughter Jenna's wedding a couple, 3 years ago or something, longer than that now. So she's like a daughter to us. And I asked her to stand up because she was living in Kramatorsk, one of our English teachers, a great Christian, a spiritual rock, really, in a lot of ways, and one of our great effective translators here. But at a women's conference this weekend in the Smoky Mountains, hosted by ladies of the Church of Christ, Kate was one of the speakers there. And I heard from others, she did a remarkable job. I'm proud of her. And what she had to go through to get from Kramatorsk to Lviv, Ukraine, to Warsaw, to now Madison tonight is a story of the ages, how she had to walk at the border again to get across there, to get to Warsaw, to get to a safe place. And the Sunday morning that she was having, she got I know you're ready to go. You've had a long day, and I appreciate you being here, but this will bless your life to hear about this. So she rides a long train to get to western Ukraine city of Lviv, and then she doesn't have time to spend in Lviv. She's got to start heading for the border because, you know, it's a mad scene there, people trying to get out, save their lives, right? So she gets a taxi driver. She pays him $75. He says he's going to take her to the front of the line. It was $100. Her English is pretty good when it comes to money. Y'all notice that, right? So she is like a daughter to us. So she pays the guy $100 thinking he's going to take her to the very front of the line. Now that line is about 18 miles long. And she's got a deadline, a certain period of time that she has to get into Warsaw to get on the plane to get to America. Her documents and so on. There's a time limit involved. So there's pressure. And he drops her off, not at the front of the line there, you know, where you cross the border, but at the back line, 18 miles away from freedom, from safety. All right, and she just starts knocking on car doors and windows. I'm Kate. I'm from Kramatorsk. Can I sit with your family for a while? And cars are stuck there. It's like a traffic jam, you know, nothing like you've seen in Madison here. And the car will move a few feet an hour. I mean, it's just, and people are getting out, walking by the hundreds and thousands to the border. And, you know, we're having some communication with Kate. And eventually, you know, we tell her you're going to get out and walk. She's all by herself. She's 22, smart girl. You're not 22. You're 20 what? Julia's 22. How old are you? 27, 22. It's all the same. So she's walking. So that Sunday morning, I know she's out of the car walking down that road trying to get to the border, and my sermon at Tuscumby that morning was walking by faith. I thought it was pretty appropriate. And so she walked by faith, and God blessed her, and she's at Madison tonight. That's an answer to prayer. That is an amazing answer prayer. And there are a lot of others I could tell our other friends that are here. Each of them has an amazing story, really, and they're a blessing to me. I love them. I want you to love them too, and you keep praying for them and pray for peace in Ukraine. Jordan is going to tell me later, Dad, you went a long time up there, and those people. This is a passion of mine. Hey, I'm just warming up, by the way, but I'm stopping now. Do you have questions? Anything I haven't covered? Where's Jordan? Jordan, where are you? What I need to talk about that I haven't covered? Got it. All right. Any questions about anything? Yes, ma'am.
How many people were killed when all this happened?
How many people were killed when all this happened? It's literally impossible to know. Like in Mariupol, they're estimating 80,000 people died in Mariupol. Like I said, just in that circle, 400 children have died. Something interesting that I think is accurate, there's no telling how many military people have died. And there are people like you that have been, volunteered into the Ukrainian army. And women, there are more women serving in the Ukrainian army than any other army in the world. It's amazing the courage of the Ukrainian women, by the way. But for every 6 Russian soldiers that are dying in this war, 1 Ukrainian soldier. The effectiveness of David versus Goliath is remarkable, but easily hundreds of thousands have died. And we're finding mass graves now in these areas that have been reclaimed by the Ukrainians. They're just hundreds and hundreds and they're tied together. They've been tortured. I won't go into graphic detail, but terrible things have happened to the children, the women of Ukraine. And again, this is on our watch, and it's got to affect us deeply, passionately. And I know it does you, and I appreciate your heart for these good people. What other question do you have? Anything? We're continuing to need funds. We sent last week $40,000 over to Ukraine because of generosity of people like you for generators. That house in Warsaw is expensive, to maintain 3 meals a day for our friends, the utilities, the rent. And we got you refugees that we're helping in France, in Great Britain, in the Netherlands, in West Ukraine, in Poland, and I'm forgetting several, and in America, and forgetting several other countries as well. You going to lead us in prayer, make a speech, lead a song? What are you going to do, brother? And this is one of the heroes of our earlier trip also. Did a great job. Came back with a broken leg, tough guy. Tough guy. But don't feel too sorry. It moved him to the head of the line coming back to America, I noticed. But appreciate this, brother. Going once, going twice, any more questions, thoughts, anything? Thank you for the privilege you've given me to be here with you. I will ask all of our Ukrainian sisters to stand up, please, and let's welcome you to Madison. You may be wondering, where are the guys? Where are the guys at? They're over in northwest Alabama. These ladies had all been in the Smokies. What a great time for Alabama people to be in Tennessee this weekend, by the way. That was a fun group to be around. But there's a women's conference. They all went to the women's conference, and the guys got to stay in northwest Alabama. Thanks again for the privilege of being with you.
Okay, we're going to say a prayer real quick, and everybody bow with me, please. Dear Lord, we come to you at this time, and we thank you so much for your faith in us and your love in us. And we know that you're an awesome God. You're an incredible God in the things that you can do. We say a special prayer this evening for Ukraine, and we say a special prayer for the families that have been torn apart and the people who have been displaced. And we thank you so much for the things that we see from them and the things that we hear and the words of encouragement that they share and how much faith they have in you. We thank you so much for allowing us to see that during this time and during this trial, how much they love you and how much they care for you. We thank you so much for what Jeff's been doing and all the people in the U.S. and around the world that have been contributing to help with those who have been displaced. We just thank you so much for the loving hearts and those who care so much to give, whether it's funds or resources or whatever they're doing to help those who are going through this horrific time. We thank you so much for the people who have been able to come here and be a part of our lives, and thank you for the eldership here at Madison that had the forethought, and Jordan and Richard to take those of us that went on the mission trip last year, and the relationships that we fostered during that time and the people that we were able to befriend. And just thank you for those who were able to get out safely, and we pray for those who are still there. We pray for the mothers and fathers that are still left behind. We thank you so much for all that you do for us. We thank you so much for all that we have, and that everything we have, our homes, our jobs, the food on our table, is because of you, not because of the things that we've done, but because you've blessed us so. And just thank you so much again for our elders for their forethought to help us to raise money to do things to help protect families and take care of families, and just pray that this war comes to an end as quickly as possible. In Jesus' name, amen.